Hi, and welcome to this very brief overview of using the Miami University online database of journals. This is a fantastic resource for you to be able to locate so many journal articles that are obviously then subject to peer review. And if you're not familiar with that term, peer review, basically as an academic like myself, in order to get tenure, which is going from an assistant to an associate professor, you must publish. And the most prestigious way to get published is in an academic journal, because academic journals, you submit an abstract or a proposal, and then you submit the final article, and then that's scrutinized by numerous people in your field. That would be where the peer part comes from. And very often they reject it. They reject it, or they say that you have to revise it and resubmit. And so by going through that peer review process, there is far less of a likelihood that anything will get published that hasn't been really scrutinized by people who know what they're talking about in that particular field. Unlike many websites, of course, where anyone can publish a website, even if it has a .org or a .net, it's not just a commercial website, there is no such scrutiny. So this is why I'm really pushing you to follow the academic convention when we're doing academic writing, of using sources that are credible. And if you do choose to use a website, then you do need to take those additional steps of making sure that you have ruled out political bias or additional personal bias, or really kind of scrutinized the source to make sure that it is of a standard that will not undermine the credibility of your project as a whole. So whenever possible, go to the academic peer-reviewed journal articles to really be in the top layer of sources as far as credibility and value are concerned. So from your Miami login, if you go to the libraries tab, this is how you're going to access the journals and then actually do a query to find articles that are going to be of value to you. So I'll then follow the link to the full library website. And from there, the best way to start is with a string searching all the articles. And this will query every journal database that Miami has. And we are so lucky at Miami because we have a wealth of journal articles that we can query. So the first thing to do, and you can experiment with different search strings. I'll use maybe an example of residential care for senior citizens. Which is an example I've used in previous videos. So this is a topic that a student did complete in a previous class of mine. So I'll go ahead and put the search string in. You may have to experiment, obviously, with different search strings to see which one is appropriate for your particular topic, and also see which ones bring fruit. Not always, you won't always get a good hit, and you won't always get good results with your first attempt. So I'll go ahead and do a search for that residential care for senior citizens, with the hope that it will turn up some results that will come from each of my cognates or from two different disciplines if you're not a major. So I'm looking for articles that have been written from a perspective of at least one of my two cognates. And because remember, in your final project, you want to have representation from both of your cognate areas. So if your cognate area is social science and education, you want to make sure that your articles are representative of both of those cognates. You don't want all of them from one, or sort of like 9 of the 10 sources from one cognate and only one from the other. You want to try and get representation from both the cognate areas. And similarly, if you're not a major and you're writing it from two disciplinary perspectives, make sure that you do represent each of those disciplines fairly. So again, you're not kind of stacking your project too heavily on one side or the other. Well, I can see that I do have some hits, but I'm going to narrow down a little bit first of all. I'm going to limit to full text to make sure I can actually read the articles and find them, and Miami does have the full text available for me to view. There's nothing worse than finding a great article and then realizing you don't have access to it. I'm going to limit my the views to peer reviews for the reasons we've already discussed. I'm not too worried about the publication date. I'm not going to insist that articles have been written within a particular time period. I am going to insist that they are academic journals, though, not newspapers. Journalists are wonderful people, but they don't have that disciplinary academic training to give them that kind of credibility and that disciplinary immersion that I want to see in the articles that you use to inform your investigation. Journalists tend to kind of look at the surface level without imbuing the writing with that disciplinary expertise, which is what we're looking for. Now, the other thing I'd like to draw to your attention is that you can limit your search by subject. So that's what is the article really focused on? And this can be really helpful. Let's say, for example, you're looking for a psychological perspective or an economic perspective. So you can look at some of the subject focuses to see if it illuminates a particular type of focus that you want to investigate. So if I'm looking for a psychological perspective, for example, well, the word emotions means, you know, definitely that might have a psychological emphasis or a psychological perspective. So I'm going to choose emotions, and obviously you could go down and check whichever ones you think might be appropriate or more likely to come from psychological or more likely to come from economic and so on. So I'll go ahead and just choose a couple of examples and hope that we get some fruit. It looks like this first one is great. If you get this prompt, it just means you need to log in again. I'm not going to worry about that. But I do see the role of emotion in service evaluation. If I were doing this project and I wanted a psychological perspective, emotions are part of the purview of psychology. So I would definitely find that a possible lead. Now, for this one, again, depending on which database you use, I need to go ahead and click on Find It. Some of the articles are more readily accessible just from that 1 or 2 clicks. And I can get the full text from the EJC, so I'll just keep following the prompt. And then finally here I can get the full text of the article, which I would like to do. There's a lot of information available on this page. Even before I get to the journal itself, I can see the authors. There's a little bit of author information, so you can see their academic training, again, to see if they do have that disciplinary expertise that you're looking for. It comes from a journal called Managing Service Quality. That's going to be important for you when you're writing your citation, as is this information here, because you're going to need the volume, the issue, the year, and the page span, which everybody always forgets when you're putting together your citation for your work cited. To launch the PDF, and I recommend you save these PDFs of the journal articles, put them on your desktop or somewhere in a folder, and I would have a folder for one disciplinary perspective and a folder for another, cognate, whichever you're doing, cognates or disciplines, and save them with a meaningful title so that you, first of all, don't download the same article multiple times, because that can happen when you're busy looking for citations, and also to make sure that you've got that good representation of both cognates or both disciplines. So that's just a very brief overview of using the library database access and using a search string. If you run into a brick wall and you're unable to find articles, please don't suffer in silence. Reach out to Mark Shores, who's the librarian for our course, or email me. I do a lot of research is my job, or a large chunk of my job, so I'm quite good at this. So if you get stuck, please reach out and I'll do my best to help you. So enjoy experimenting and using those databases, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with.